Hello everyone and welcome to the Smashi Business Show. Today is Monday, January 5, 2025 and I'm Abdul Majid Awan.
And I'm Richard Fitzgerald.
And today's headlines are very interesting. Abu Dhabi's Sovereign Wealth Fund, ADIA, has hit $1.7 trillion, rivaling Norway and China. We'll discuss that in detail. Saudi Arabia launches 480 megawatts Hexagon data center in Riyadh, the biggest in the world for a government center. And Saudi marcom expert warns MBC Shahid Rebrand could dilute brand value. We'll discuss what brand values are and how we also have a lot of brand values. But I think the biggest thing that happened over the weekend was how Venezuela president, quote unquote, was kidnapped. And our UAE billionaire, Khalaf Al was one of the people who actually commented on it. How do you see it, Rich? You've seen the world, actually. You moved from one part of the world to this, and I think you've seen the 2003 Saddam Hussein thing. I think that was the earliest that we remember.
Where they took history and politics, there's a lot going on, and also, you see images, you see videos, it just shows like there's so many countries in the world, there's leadership struggles, there's power struggles and things like that. There are iconic images coming out of this, it's like movie stuff, isn't it? It's helicopters, raid at nights, and it's all sorts of language and optics. And, honestly, like, who really knows what's going on in all these different things, A lot of the lens of the region is to do with oil, and, there's some really smart analysis about the petrodollar and protecting it, and the $303 billion barrels of oil. Saudi has a lot of billion barrels of oil underground that haven't been pumped yet, and Venezuela is always on the high charts there, but it does sort of put into big questions that sort of are not for here and now about sovereignty and how to protect your state and security and everything like that. But it was a pretty shocking event for the world, and a lot of this region came out and condoned it. Lovin Doha covered the Qatari statements quite early. Khalaf Al-Habtour, from a business point of view, spoke about it as well. So, it's one of those shocking things. It's another episode in the Donald Trump soap opera that just grabs global attention. While, it's been one of those start to the years, right? We've had Somaliland in the headlines in this region. We've had Yemen, which is an ongoing discussion geopolitically in the region. And obviously, in Gaza, the genocide continues there with constant horror stories, really, of shootings and attacks, right at a time of the year where it's cold, it's wet, and, other people are on leave and things like that. But, it just shows that these things don't sleep, I guess.
Yeah, so man-made catastrophe plus naturally everything is not in place. But you talked about Somaliland. Very interestingly, remember the BCG whole fiasco where they put out a plan. Somaliland was one of the countries who did the story. It's really interesting that even though everyone condemned the whole thing that was done by this company, but eventually things are going that way. Somaliland, Israel becomes the first country to say that, okay, we accept you as a state. And now that BCG plan somehow we think is working, it's not working.
And
it's so confusing.
Us and media who's we're trying to highlight things that aren't really shed light to things that aren't reported on per se, but by doing that we're legitimizing these plans and rather than putting forth or legitimizing or shedding light on other plans which are maybe pro protecting cultures and identities, I guess.
I think we should talk about the Arab plan, remember? As soon as everyone went to Egypt, there was a $50 billion plan to rebuild Gaza.
That would be good to reinforce and things like that. But, it does put into question lots of things. But at the same time, business is ongoing, right? Like, I think that's the ironic thing. You could get caught up in geopolitical stuff and you could think they impact everything. And they do. But also, things move on, I just saw amazing numbers out of Qatar, 5.5 million tourists last year, and it just shows the activity, like the headlines and the revenue from Qatar Airways are not that far away from Emirates Airlines, and like it just shows the activity in the region. Like, we'll talk about some of the segue topics here today, but there's just so much things to be positive about. There's so many startups, there's so many macroeconomic factors in the region that are to be positive about. You could be doom and gloom, and you could be like petrodollar, you could be like, American imperialism just continues, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. But of course, there are, people drew references to regime change. Like we've been talking about this for 5 minutes, and we haven't
Yeah.
talked about Iran.
Oh, yes.
And Iran has, I think, day 6 of natural protests, and Smashi Business covered it quite well because it was the shortage, it was the bazaar.
Yeah.
When we talk back
market,
to the
yeah.
when we talk to the Arab Spring, it was to do with a street seller setting himself on fire, and it points to these are political, but they're actually so related with economic prosperity and people's hopes in nations and people building economic prosperity. And that was what happened in Iran this time, plus probably other outside influence, as was claimed and stated by politicians. But yeah, Iran is another one.
Yeah, and Tunisia, the fruit seller was from Aziz's country, Tunisia, and
Aziz
it was the starting point.
Yeah, and then goes back to, that's the thing, we look at these things and we go, oh, it's regime change. Yeah, but if people are able to have economic prosperity, it's really one of the raison d'etre of this media brand, that there's a young cohort in the region who want economic prosperity, and for the dreamers and the doers, that we try and highlight those stories. Because if you do, and if you have hope in economic prosperity and you can progress, then you're busy with that, I guess.
Yeah, yesterday I was reading one of the analysis, a LinkedIn post by one of the VC fund owners here. Don't remember her name, but she said that in the first time in history, UAE startups have crossed $100 billion in total evaluation. And I was like, okay, this is a good number. I asked her for the source because I wanted to do a story that they've crossed this number. Most probably she'll comment and reply, but shows you that all the entrepreneurial spirits and everything good is coming out of the region. Whatever the geopolitical situation is, they are doing good. They don't care. Actually, to be honest, the new generation, they're looking at business as business. They don't care what is happening. They just want to build something new. And that's the good part about this region. It gives you the platform. It gives you the energy. And the very first story is about one of the platforms. Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth assets have climbed to an estimated $1.7 trillion, placing the emirate on par with the world's largest state investors, including Norway and China. Oslo is the biggest one in the world. China's state sovereign wealth fund is the second, according to data from Global SWF, the experts on everything sovereign wealth funds. And on a per capita basis, this was the interesting part, Abu Dhabi now ranks as the most capital-dense sovereign power globally, with $3,879 in sovereign wealth per person as of the third quarter of 2025, the year which just ended. And it's, again, ahead of Norway, Singapore, China, the biggest economies when it comes to sovereign wealth funds.
Yeah, so the scale marks a remarkable transformation for an emirate that had a population of just 30,000 people in the early oil era not that long ago. Decades of energy surpluses have channeled into a tightly managed investment ecosystem, concentrating capital across 3 state-backed entities, ADIA, Mubadala, and ADQ.
And the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, the biggest one of them, is overseen by His Highness Sheikh Tanoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Whenever you talk about Abu Dhabi, you have to talk about him. He alone sits on all 3 of them. He manages around $1.1 trillion with roughly 32% invested in developed markets, which is considered West, but now our markets are also developed. Meanwhile, ADQ controls about $263 billion in assets, generating close to 20% of Abu Dhabi's non-oil GDP through its portfolio companies.
Mubadala, chaired by His Highness Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, operates more like a global private equity firm, managing $330 billion and holding strategic stakes in assets ranging from global foundries to Emirates Global Aluminium. Together, the 3 funds give Abu Dhabi outsized influence in global markets, with sovereign wealth per person now more than 3 times Norway's and nearly 9 times China's.
So I'll just give you a short story before we move on. In Pakistan, whenever we talked about this, we always talked about that every person in Pakistan was under a debt of at least $30,000. Whenever we got some money from IMF, we were like, okay, now we have to increase it to 32,000. But this shows you that these are developed economies. These are the countries which are doing good. Per person is $3,298. $3,287 sovereign wealth. That means that is the amount that these state-backed sovereign wealth funds are spending. It just shows you the capital of capital moniker. It's completely true. They are increasing in size and wealth very fast.
Yeah.
And I think this year we'll see them not double, but at least increase a lot, by a lot.
Yeah, I think, last year, 2025 was actually a good year on the capital markets in the US. Like, a lot of sectors are up like 30-40%, and there was a few bad years, but they say it's a bit bubbly, just like, just in the capital markets. But obviously we talked about IPOs not being as high this year.
Yeah.
But so those sovereign wealth funds are globally diverse and they have a lot of equities.
Yeah.
I like the analogy of like a massive private equity firm, and that's really how they're running things, which is interesting. And it just shows like perceived high gaps in all metrics of GDP and things are, I'm making up a word, but are catch-upable, right?
Yeah.
Like you can catch up with other countries who have way higher GDP. Like we don't have that many $1 trillion GDPs in the region. I think Saudi's the only one.
Saudi's the only one.
UAE's not near it yet, but it will get there,
Yeah.
right? Like imagine having $1 trillion economy in a country of 10 million people.
Yeah.
It shows the economic strength, and I think we'll just see more and more in the region in the future.
And funnily, everyone says, to be honest, we have to point to West that, it's only oil. I think last year, the last number I remember, 785 billion was our GDP in the UAE, and 35% of that nearly was non-oil. So it's not just that they're just taking oil and making money now. They're moved away like 35%. Hopefully they'll move more, and every year is a new target. UAE has a centennial plan, 2071. They have so many plans in motion. Saudi has the Vision 2030. They also want to move away from oil, and that is actually the next story, which is more about how Saudi is doing that. So they've launched the Hexagon data center in Riyadh. Very nice shape. Reminds me of the Pentagon in the US, but this is Hexagon, one more side added, and it marks the kingdom's entry into the global race to build large-scale digital infrastructure, and described by the Saudi press agency as the world's largest government data center. The facility has a capacity of 480 megawatts and is classified as Tier 4, the highest international standard for data center reliability.
Yeah, just as you were saying, moving away from oil, AI data is the new oil, I guess, and they're investing in it big time. So Hexagon data center, what's the one in Neom? Oxagon, is it?
Yeah, Oxagon.
Okay, so Hexagon is in Riyadh. It's a data center. There's been a lot of talk about building data centers, having the power to go into them, and there's been a lot of talk of even just data servers in the region over the years. Oracle, Huawei, AWS have data centers now in Saudi they never had, and even all the data for TikTok is hosted in Saudi as well. So Saudi Arabia's development sectors as data and advanced digital technologies become central to economic and social transformation. The plans aligns with the strategy of the Saudi Data and AI Authority, also acronym is SDAIA, SADIA, and the goals of Vision 2030, which is not that far away now, with data infrastructure viewed as critical to technical sovereignty and non-oil revenue diversification.
And the facility covers more than 30 million square feet and meets LEED, LEED Gold standards. They're the highest standards when it comes to sustainability, incorporating advanced energy efficiency and smart cooling systems, including direct liquid and hybrid cooling. These are technicalities, basically. It also integrates renewable energy sources. Obviously, I think it will be solar, positioning it as one of the world's largest green data center. Just keep a note of the largest, the biggest ones. And Hexagon is also intended to serve as the foundation for a nationwide network of data centers. And it's estimated to give $10 billion in local economic impact. That's some of the numbers. The story is important, not from this that, they're building something crazy and something big in the shape of a hexagon. The story refers back to Humane. We know Humane was launched in May last year. it feels funny to say it was launched last year. It's only been 5 days of 2026. But Humane, I think, will again be a part of this whole project because it's a state-backed AI company which is building data centers. They have tenants already for the data centers that will be completed in 2026 and 2027. They have XAI. They will be hosting their data there. OpenAI has a UAE G42 Stargate project where they'll be hosting the data. We have so many tenants already for a lot of data centers that will be built in Saudi Arabia. So it shows you that it's not they're just building, oh, we want to build and then we'll attract people. They already have customers and clients. And Tariq Amin has been going to every conference and saying that we will build so much more. And I think it's one of the real estate investments now. It's not just data or AI infrastructure. It's kind of a real estate investment. Like if I build a building, people come, rent, give me money. I somehow earn money out of it.
Yeah.
This is just hosting data.
Yeah.
Right? So it's so interesting about
It's
that.
compute power. It's like the inference. It's just that speed to compute power. But it's kind of, it is going back to that point about sovereignty, that if you can host it on the ground, then, you know, it's the irony, because for the last decade we've been told about cloud. But this is cloud, but cloud lives somewhere, right? Yeah. Cloud is in the cloud. It can process things in real time over LTE or 5G or whatever, but it's then backed up by a real world server. And I think when people talk about AI bubbles, it's just this infrastructure that's been built out. And I think that's what this region has sort of copped onto.
Yeah, and Lubna, one of the people we highlighted in our Driven Dreamers Doer series, she said that Lubna Al Alayan, she has Alayan Group, very big conglomerate, $50 billion now worth. She said that if she were given an option in AI, she would now at the moment invest in infrastructure. She won't invest in OpenAI or the things that run on it. She was like, I'll invest on infrastructure. Yeah. So coming from a person who has done it, it's a very nice tactic. But moving on to another of the Saudi stories, very interesting, Rebrand by MBC and Shahid. We talk about Shahid a lot. I think I got his subscription over the weekend also. So I saw the portfolio and I was really inspired. Right? Shahid has a big portfolio of shows. Yeah. And Arabic shows especially. I have to see the Katib, the Office Saudi one. I have to start that. Most probably today I will start it.
Study Office, it's on Shahid.
They basically rebranded. They made Shahid into MBC Shahid. They removed the her and the and added MBC into it. But it's a new rebranding, and the Saudi marcom expert Musaid Al-Kashanin warned that merging the legacy MBC brand with its digital service under a combined identity, MBC Shahid, risks confusing the audience and weakening the long-term value of both brands. It's an opinion by him.
It's an opinion. It's a way to cover the story. Yeah. We disagree with the opinion. Yeah. You know, Shahid is it's like shufar. It's an Arabic word to watch, and yes, it can be an Arabic platform, but it's always only been spelt in Arabic letters. And now this new logo has got these 3 dots in English and Arabic, and it's just a really nice logo and positioning. And I think his point basically is that, you know, that MBC is Middle East Broadcasting, and it's an era of studios and TV, and it's not a streaming era. But the whole transition to streaming has been a struggle naming-wise. Like in the US, CNN Plus was scrapped. Now they have CNN All Access. That's under Warner Brothers Discovery, who have killed and renamed, you know, HBO Max to HBO to Max again. Like and everyone's renaming things. Yeah. You know, Sky have a Now thing in the UK. Like everyone's sort of renaming things all the time. Paramount Plus. There was Peacock. There's all different streaming services. Like Peacock is from CNBC because of that, you know, that CNBC logo that's got the colors of a peacock, like a rainbow. That's where Peacock comes from. The streaming service called Peacock is from that coloring palette. Like that's where the name comes from. So everyone, except Netflix, who like stuck their name and stuck their code.
And with that doo-doom thing.
Even though Netflix had a funny name when it originally, if you Google it, like when they were doing the business plan. So Netflix launched in 1999, and they did their first streaming after DVDs in 2007. Gibble, right? Yeah. So, but no one knows that. So it was always Netflix. But that, on the working documents, it had a funny name. But so MBC, Shahid, like there's a lot of different streaming services in the region, a lot of different names. I think it's a good move, personally. I think what do you kill off the cable? What MBC have done really well with Shahid is they started just with subscription and streaming, and then they added fast channels. Like 80 of them, like free ad-supported streaming services. So a lot of their 30, 40 million downloads or whatever it is, even more, are users, they're not all subscribers, about 3 million subscribers. So this sort of link between watching terrestrial TV and just being the home is, MBC is a technology streaming company now. And one way to not spinco or crapco, as they're doing in the US, not to split off the cable assets, is to bring them along on the journey properly. And by linking these two entities together, the other choice was to spin them off and eventually kill and die MBC and make Shahid the new thing. But why lose all that heritage? Why lose all that thing? Because as you said, the archive, the library is there. And MBC Shahid's an excellent service. I watch it all the time. I'm currently watching a brilliant show. I can just never pronounce the names, but it's an Egyptian show with Dina Sherbini in it, and it's episode 13 of 16. The last 3 episodes are dropped on the 8th of Jan. It's an excellent show. It's to do with she's struggling with kidney failure, and it's done really well. It's an excellent show. But there's many of these, and there's many of these. There's Kuwaiti shows, there's Saudi shows. Shahid is really home to it, but they're not the only one. Like Yango Play have a lot of good Arabic content. Watch It Out of Egypt have the good Arabic content, and you can see these shows pop up on different ones and different places. And now, as we often talked about lately, is that you now have a 3-for-2 bundle where you can get OSM Plus and Disney Plus together, but then you've also got Stars Play. So you've got lots of different evolution of this. Yes, the criticism was, why you did so well for 10 years, you had Shahid, why now? They do have a new CEO. His name is, so Sam Barnett left, and then they have a new CEO, an Australian gentleman, who's been sort of part of the rebrand.
Yes. Sam Barnett was the last one. I forgot the name.
Yeah, and they relocated all their studios from UAE to Saudi. They've got different offices in Saudi now. They've got really big studios over there. And they do have a lot of Saudi productions. They did lose, of course, the Russian Saudi league to Tamania. And they replaced that with the Bundesliga, which isn't quite the same thing when you're a Saudi audience. I think they'll eventually get them back. It's a 6-year contract, but I think MBC Shahid should be the home of Saudi football, and even ahead of the Zone or ahead of Smashi. Although maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot. Maybe we should try and get the rights for the Saudi league on Smashi Sports. But there's the Zone as well. But this new CEO's name?
Mike Sneesby.
Mike Sneesby, So he's doing a really good job on this transformation, and it's all over the digital screens as you drive around the UAE, which is a rebrand, but it's also making people aware of the MBC logo again and getting it sort of top of mind. And they took all their sales out of Dubai, out of Shwari Group a few years ago, and they moved them into MMS, into Saudi for sales as well. So there's a lot of sort of transition in media in this way in Saudi.
But what do you think about just a little bit of rebranding? Is rebranding important after a few years, do you think, if you're doing something new? For example, MBC, they have Shahid. Is rebranding important? Because if you're doing something and if people remember your name, do you need to rebrand?
Yeah, there's the rebrands, there's full rebrands, and then there's logo changes, and then there's mergers and acquisitions, and there's integrations and things. I think there's so many different factors involved. Like, from a marketing point of view, it's a good way to increase awareness. From a structural point of view, what does it really say? Are your values changing? Is it positioning yourself for a new era? Have you merged other things under it? Like, from a business point of view, it just depends, right? Like, Etisalat had a big one with Eons, and it's moving them into technical other areas. There's lots of different arguments about this. I generally, I'm on the side of keeping things and reinforcing messaging all the time. Like, Disney managed to do that. I was watching the Bob Iger masterclass yesterday on that masterclass app, and he talked about branding as well, because when he purchased Pixar and all the other ones, they still keep the Disney brand,
Yeah.
and the principles of the Disney brand still stay even when you acquire all those other things. Even at poor times, they were saying, "Oh, you have to change what Disney stands for." But not only did the Disney name stay, or the Walt Disney Company stay, also what they stood for stays even after all the acquisitions. I think MBC's are doing that. I think they are pretty much doing that. Yeah.
I think you heard the Friday show. I was talking to Worth about this book about repositioning, and it was basically about brand identity. And they gave an example of Disney in that when Disney was losing its touch, they brought in Pixar and all that, but they kept their brand identity of let magic happen. They kept it the same, but they just incorporated everything under one roof of Disney. But it's very interesting how these things happen. Rebranding is a good tool. Huda Beauty rebranded. They only changed the logo. I didn't think anything else changed in them. But I don't know, maybe behind the scenes, structurally, they changed something. But a lot of the examples in this region are there for rebranding. Maybe someday EMA rebrands into something, or maybe Dimac rebrands into a data infrastructure because he's very bullish on data. So we never know, but rebranding, if it has a purpose, it looks great. And MBC Shahid one, as Rich said, looks good for now. And thank you very much for today. That's a wrap. Thank you for tuning into the Smashi Business Show. Make sure to follow us across all social media channels as Smashi Business. And stay ahead with our daily newsletter. You'll find the subscription link in the description.
This, as always, has been a Smashi Business Show, a part of the Smashi Business production, of course, part of the Augustus Media Podcast Network. Shout out to the reach of 2 million monthly. If you go onto the Augustus Media Podcast Network on Apple this week, you should see up to 70 shows there now, which is amazing. Lots of English and Arabic, lots of AI, lots of integration. You can get your news across Smashi Sports, Smashi Business, Smashi Entertainment, and of course all the 11 cities across the region as well, 22 and counting.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.